Go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We're going to go ahead and do roll call. So, let's see if I can find the roll in here. Amber's going to test me, but she didn't put it in here. Nope, there it is. All right. So, Barat, not here. Elba, not here.
Just check online because they may be remotely available.
Those are the only, Brad, those are the only folks into the WebEx, correct? Okay. Edward? No. Marianne? Charles Brogdon? Diane Belmont? Killing it today. Judith Gray?
I'm here.
I am here. City Manager?
Here.
Mr. Mayor?
Here.
County Manager?
Give him a
Commissioner
few
Daughtry?
I was going to say he might be at the chamber.
And Kate?
Here.
And Allison? All
I'm
right.
here.
Who's up?
Allison.
All right, public comment period. We are going to suggest that if you have a public comment, you submit it to Amber Herring, the Secretary for the GTC and WC TDA. All right. We'll jump into old business.
Joe said if there was food, you'd be here.
Oh, there he is.
There's your sandwich right there.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Greg.
Called in yet to the WebEx?
Yeah, yes, he's the highlighted one there.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
So we've got Chris Kavanaugh, who's been working with us for the Tourism Development Master Plan. He's going to give us kind of an update of where we're at today and provide some background on that. So, Chris, are you there?
I'm here.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. And will I be able to share my content?
Yes.
Great. Thanks for handing over the control. Appreciate it. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. I can't see you, but hopefully you can see me. We will go ahead and pull up my presentation here. There we go. Hey, I see you. Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Chris Kavanaugh. I'm coming to you from Asheville this morning, which is my hometown. And I appreciate the chance to have worked with a number of you on this project thus far. I'm going to jump right into this and start sharing my screen. There we go. And go ahead and tell you a couple of things as we get started here. This is part of the Strategic Master Plan for Tourism Growth. And what I'm going to present to you today really consists of four different segments, four different components. You're going to see some local hotel market data that tells you a little bit about the lodging market in Wayne County. You're going to see the results, a very high-level overview of our regional traveler survey and some recommendations and insights coming from that. You'll see the results of our organizational structure assessment, and then we'll talk about what's next in our project. So as I mentioned, the first thing that you're going to see here today is the hotel market data. This comes from a company called Smith Travel Research, and they're largely the sole the dominant company in this field. They've been doing it since the mid-1970s. And the data you're going to see here comes from the full year 2014 through January of 2020. None of the data you're going to see here today includes any impact from COVID-19. This covers 89%, the vast majority of Wayne County's 1,200 hotel rooms. And the objective here is to look at the market and look at only at this one part of the market. Now, obviously, hotels are not the only part of the market. They are a very critical part of the market, though, because overnight visitors generate the greatest economic benefit for the community, whether they are staying in hotels with family and friends, or whether they're traveling for leisure or for business to Goldsboro and Wayne County. So let's look at occupancy. And occupancy is very simply the percentage of rooms filled in hotels in Wayne County in those 1,200 hotel rooms, beginning in calendar year 2014 and running through all of calendar year 2019, again, before the pandemic struck. You see here that actually occupancy peaked at around 66% in 2016, and has pretty much been flat since then in terms of the number of rooms filled, in terms of the percentage of rooms filled. But there's something else that's going on behind that, and that is the number of hotel rooms actually increased pretty sharply in 2019. It was pretty level for a number of years, and then in 2019 increased sharply due to the addition of new hotel rooms in the county. And you can see that even though occupancy was flat to slightly down in 2019, the fact that we had a lot more rooms actually demonstrates that the market was pretty good in 2019 in spite of all those new rooms. There's a few other things that we can do as part of this data as well. There's a few other things that we can do as part of this as well, and we'll take a look at monthly hotel occupancy. And this is the average for all months from 2014 through January of 2020. And one thing that's remarkable about this in comparison to a lot of other destinations that I work in, you can see actually that occupancy is pretty even. It's pretty much flat within only a few degrees of each other, a few points of each other, except when we get to December and January. And January in particular is typically the slowest time of the year for all hotels. But you can see that actually it's remarkably consistent from month to month during that time period. Again, only January is really the significant outlier, a bit so on December as well. If we look at day of the week, we see a similar pattern, actually. Again, this is percentage of rooms filled in Wayne County. And you can see that, again, during Monday through Saturday, it ranges from about 59% occupancy up to 68% occupancy on Saturday. Sunday, again, is the low period, but that's the lowest day of occupancy for any market, just about, across the United States. So that's the lowest drop. I think what both these charts indicate is that you have a very strong business travel component coming in all months of the year, except really December and January. And then we see the same pattern for day of the week occupancy as well. It's very strong Monday through Wednesday, drops off a little bit on Thursday, and we do see that in other markets as well, where business travelers depart a destination on Thursday to be back in the office and home on Friday. But then leisure occupancy picks back up, probably also some Air Force base related travel on the weekends as well. Again, Sunday is the only real down period, but 44.5%, while not great, it's not horrible either on Sunday nights. We look at average daily rates, the last thing I wanted to show you here in terms of hotel data. And even though you've had a lot more hotel rooms come into the market, new hotels opening in the market, it's actually gone up pretty nicely, despite having occupancy that's relatively flat. You can see it's actually the average daily rate charged by hotels has gone from about $72 in 2014 up to $88.50 in 2019, which is some nice growth. That also is right in line in terms of the pace of growth that we've seen across North Carolina, the region, and the nation. So what this tells us, all this hotel data tells us, is that you probably have a nice blend of both business travel and leisure travel, but there's still opportunities certainly to grow the market, particularly in overnight visitation. And as I mentioned, overnight visitation creates the greatest economic impact, particularly on weekends, where I think you have some opportunity to grow leisure travel. So let's talk more about leisure travel here. Excuse me. Another key part of this project was research that we conducted in February, again, before the pandemic hit, working with our partner, H2R Market Research, to do a survey of leisure travelers living within 200 miles of Goldsboro. That's 200 mile radius as the crow flies. So that gets into Northern Virginia, takes in most of Charlotte, the Charlotte market, and gets into South Carolina, certainly takes in Raleigh, Greensboro, and Winston-Salem. We completed a total of 800 online surveys for this study. And this is a good methodology for us to capture people in their homes, to find people who have both visited, as you'll see, Goldsboro and Wayne County, as well as people who have not visited, and to understand why they haven't visited as well. So we'll just jump right into the data. Just one other thing I'll show you here along the left side of the slide is we asked questions really in 4 different areas. And you can see those different areas lined up there along the left side. So I'll go into some of the highlights of the surveys, survey results. We talk about aided awareness here for Goldsboro and Wayne County, and that's basically asking the leisure traveler, are you familiar with the destination? And we looked at Goldsboro and Wayne County compared to a number of other eastern North Carolina destinations, some of which have some similarities to Goldsboro and Wayne County, some of which are obviously very different, like Wilmington. Wilmington, as you'll see here, is the outlier across the board for most of these comparisons, and that's okay. It's a much larger destination. It's obviously got beach communities as well. But we looked at aided awareness as, again, basically asking the level of familiarity that leisure travelers have with these different destinations. And we found that 37% of leisure travelers within 200 miles say that they were familiar with, had either heard of, considered visiting, or had visited Goldsboro and Wayne County. We also asked about past visitation. Have you ever visited Goldsboro and Wayne County and these other communities in the past? We found that past visitation was relatively low, but again, it was fairly similar to a number of other eastern North Carolina destinations, except again for Wilmington. So 21% of our surveyed travelers say that they had ever visited Goldsboro and Wayne County. Now, keep in mind, that's 21% of 800 people surveyed. So that gives us a pretty good number to work with in terms of asking those people about what they did when they visited Goldsboro and how they behaved. So we'll jump into that and see of the people who said that they have ever visited Wayne County and Goldsboro. As you see on the right side of the slide there, 30% said that they were passing through on their way to another destination, and 27% said that they were visiting friends and family. Now, it's great that people want to pass through and perhaps even stop and enjoy a meal in Wayne County, perhaps on their way to other places in eastern North Carolina, like the beach. It's great that people want to come and visit friends and family, but that represents 57% of visitors, of leisure visitors here. What we'd like to do is be able to build up more of the primary reasons as to why people visit the area, to understand better as to why it is that they're visiting, and to create more reasons to visit other than just passing through, where they may not spend the night or spend much money with us, and other than just visiting friends and family, which is important, but that's really limited by the number of people that actually live in the community. We also found that among those people who visited the area, they were almost evenly split between those people who spent the night, an average of 2.5 nights, and day trippers. You can see over on the left side that length of stay, that 46% of our past visitors didn't even spend the night. They were just making a day trip or just passing through. That means that 54% of our visitors to the area did spend the night, and they spent the night an average of 2.5 nights. And 2.5 nights is a pretty typical number for most destinations like Goldsboro, Wayne County. We see that half of them, 53%, said that they spent, of those people who spent the night, said they spent it in a hotel or motel, and a full third spent the night with friends and family. Now, as you know, you can be visiting friends and family and also stay in a hotel. In fact, for my money, that's usually the best way to visit friends and family, is to stay in a hotel somewhere and not in their home, but that's a different subject. What about future intent to visit? So we asked our travelers, our broad audience of leisure travelers, those people who are familiar with us, what's your future intent to visit Goldsboro and Wayne County? And yeah, we found around 32% of travelers were likely to say that they intend to visit in the future, which is again pretty similar to some of the other Eastern North Carolina destinations, except again for Wilmington, not surprising. But this shows again that we've got a lot of opportunity here. Now, one thing you'll notice too is that actually the future intent to visit is pretty similar here between people who live within 100 miles of Goldsboro and people who live outside of 100 miles. By the way, this doesn't include any residents of the county. So we see that future intent to visit is actually pretty comparable there. You would think that it would actually be a little bit higher among people who live closer in. They're more easily able to get to Goldsboro and Wayne County. But this number, again, just shows that there's lots of potential to generate more visitation to the area in comparison to some other destinations. We still have a ways to go. Now, what about their opinion of the area? We asked all of our familiar travelers, whether they had visited or not, but at least had to have heard of the destination, their opinion as to whether, or the degree to which their opinion is positive or negative on a 5-point scale. And so 42% of travelers said that they gave their opinion of Goldsboro and Wayne County is either a 4 or 5. So we said that was basically what we call top 2 box, either somewhat positive or very positive. That's 42% is okay, but again, it falls short of a lot of our other destinations in that Eastern North Carolina group. We're just above Kinston and just really within 1 percentage point of Kinston, which is within the margin of error. It's also interesting, too, if we break it down between those people in the survey who live within 100 miles and those people who live more than 100 miles away. And you can see, actually, and this is somewhat surprising, that people who live farther away actually have a higher opinion of, more people have a higher opinion of Goldsboro and Wayne County than do people who live slightly closer in. And this is something that we see in a number of areas throughout the survey. We'll talk more about this here next. That's different from destinations like Wilmington and New Bern, where you see actually people who live closer in have a higher opinion of those destinations. Now, here's something that I found really interesting, but it makes sense when you begin to think about it. So we know that basically 4 out of 10 leisure travelers say that they have a positive opinion of Goldsboro and Wayne County. But what's interesting about this is we broke the results down between overnight visitors, those in the blue bar there, and people who only made a day trip to the area, were either just passing through or who just made a day trip into the area without spending the night. And you can see here that the number of people who, the number of overnight visitors who have a very positive opinion about Goldsboro and Wayne County is much higher than those day trippers. You can see day trippers are much more likely to have either a neutral opinion or a negative opinion. And I think this speaks a lot to the importance of overnight visitors, because not only do they create greater economic impact, but they also are able to immerse themselves more in the destination. They eat in your restaurants. They often shop in your stores. They experience more cultural activities or outdoor activities. The depth and breadth of the experience becomes very important to those folks. And so the destination becomes much more appealing to them among those people who actually spent the night. Those people are also potentially your future people who relocate to the area. They are the people who our future entrepreneurs who may move to Goldsboro and Wayne County after having spent the night, people who may retire to the area. Now, there's one other thing that we look at in terms of positive or negative opinion, and that's something called a Net Promoter Score. And all this does basically is ask the respondent to the survey to give us a rating on a scale of 0 to 10 on what's the likelihood you would recommend the area to friends and family. And because that's considered to be the ultimate measure of satisfaction or positive opinion about a product or a service or even a place. So those people who give us a 9 or a 10 are considered to be promoters. And those are the folks in the green bar there. Those folks who give us sort of a neutral score, 7 or 8, are in the yellow. And the detractors are people who give us a 0 to 6. They're not necessarily saying positive things about us, but we also know that they're not out promoting us. So getting more people who are a 9 or a 10 is really important. And you can see that our Net Promoter Score is over here for each of the destinations from Wilmington on down to Kinston. And we're actually in the negative here. We've got more people who give us, in terms of visitors, a negative score. Now let's break this down a little bit further. And let's break it down between people who live 1 to 100 miles away and those travelers who live more than 100 miles away. And again, you can see that the folks who live farther out actually have a higher opinion of the area than do close-in travelers. Closer-in travelers have more of a negative opinion, whereas it's pretty much pretty much balanced in terms of Net Promoter Score for people living farther away. I think this speaks to two things. One, the fact that the destination appeal is weaker within 100 miles may indicate that they may know more things about the destination, may see more news stories, may hear more people talking about it than people from farther away. And again, these are people who recently visited the destination. We know that if you come to a destination and have an overnight experience and you're from farther away, and you're again more likely to say good things about a destination. You may have a server in a restaurant who gives amazing service to you or have an incredible meal. You may have a great outdoor experience and be more likely to recommend the experience to others. And we see that again here, that Goldsboro overnight visitors, regardless of where they come from, 39% of them, almost 40%, are promoters. They're giving us a 9 or a 10 in terms of the likelihood to recommend the destination. Day trippers are much more likely to be negative for, again, probably a variety of different reasons, given that they are a little more likely to live closer in. So there's definitely a lot of potential from farther away, but I also think that's going to require a stronger brand image. We'll talk about more of that in a second. And also doing more outreach to invite people to spend the night. So as part of the survey, we also asked, just top of mind, what are the first things that come to mind when you think about Goldsboro and Wayne County? And the things that came to mind, top of mind, not surprisingly, Seymour Johnson, 6% of people said that was the first thing that came to mind, again, without giving them any other information about the destination. Seymour Johnson and restaurants, particularly in food, especially barbecue, were top of mind here. And again, it was only 6% of people who said Seymour Johnson top of mind. Restaurants were about 6% as well, barbecue at 2%. Now, we'll talk more about this in a second. Obviously, Seymour Johnson's well known within the close-in area. It obviously is a significant economic impact driver. It also drives a lot of overnight stays. We do know that. But if you're a leisure traveler, it's difficult for you to engage with the Air Force Base because, one, it may be difficult for you to get on the base, obviously. And two, there's no other way really except the air show to regularly engage with the fact that you've got this great economic resource. So you can be well known for the Air Force Base, and it's incredibly important, but that's not necessarily helpful if you're a leisure traveler thinking about where to go for a weekend visit, for instance. Now, we also asked the question, we provided a long list of different attributes and said, okay, which of these best describe Goldsboro and Wayne County very well or fairly well, somewhat well. And the three things that that people most associate with Goldsboro and Wayne County, again, if they're familiar with the area, they find it an easy destination to find your way around in, 57%, a variety of local food and beverage options at 53%, and they find it safe. They perceive it to be a safe destination at 47%. Now, food and beverage is great. I'm a big believer and driver of food and beverage, but it's also really hard to sell, say, for instance, being an easy destination to find your way around in, or even being safe, because you can be perceived as safe, and that's very important, but that's also a very hard thing to sell, because as soon as you start promoting that, something bad happens in the community, and people say, oh, you were never telling the truth all along. Let's break this down a little bit further, though. Again, this shows the importance of overnight visitors to the destination. Overnight visitors there are represented in the blue bars. Day trippers are represented in the green bars. And you can see across the entire spectrum here of destination characteristics, the overnight visitors are much more likely to describe the area in these terms than day trip visitors. Day trip visitors are less likely to say these things about you, less likely to associate these characteristics with you, much more so in some cases. It's also interesting, even on things like a variety of shopping options. 54% of overnight visitors say that describes the area either perfectly or very well. Only 12% of day trippers say that. So again, we see that's just one example of how the destination experience resonates so much more with overnight visitors. Now, what do both overnight visitors and day trippers associate with the area? And here are the top activities and attributes associated with Goldsboro and Wayne County. Number one was Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. But look here, it's interesting to note that 74% of day trippers associated the Air Force Base with the destination versus only 65% of overnight visitors. And you can see that's actually lower for overnight visitors than downtown Goldsboro. It's basically the same as for overnight visitors as Eastern North Carolina Barbecue, Mount Olive Pickles at 66%, and even the Neuse River. It's also interesting for me to note how strongly Wings Over Wayne is associated with the community, even though it's an event that, relatively speaking, doesn't happen all that often. So again, the Air Force Base is very closely linked to the community, to the destination, which is good. And unless you have business at the Air Force Base or visiting family who's stationed here, it's also hard to plan a trip around that as a motivator. Let's look again at travelers within 100 miles versus those within 100 to 200 miles. And we see again, if you're close in, if you're a leisure traveler close in, Seymour Johnson here at 70% of those travelers is much more likely to be associated with the community. It's pretty farther down the list if you're from farther away. Only 49% of travelers from farther away are likely to associate it with Goldsboro and Wayne County. Much more important to them in terms of what they associate with the destination are downtown Goldsboro, fresh air, Eastern North Carolina barbecue, and great restaurants. You can see great restaurants doesn't even show up here in the top 7 characteristics that they associate with the destination for those people closer in. Now, what did they do when they got here? 38% of travelers, of actual visitors, say that they dine in local restaurants. 29% of them said that they visited downtown Goldsboro, and 29% said they shopped at locally owned retail. What's interesting to me is I think you've got a big opportunity on outdoor activities. You can see a lot of the outdoor activities don't necessarily register very high at all right now in terms of being top of mind or being activities that people participate in when they come to visit. So you've got a big opportunity from everything from the cliffs of the Neuse and the Neuse River to the Mountains to Sea Trail to the paddle trails, even hunting and fishing and golfing registered fairly low in terms of the things that people said that they did when they were here on their last visit. Then lastly, what are the reasons why people don't come to the destination? And the top three reasons, if you look at their future intent to visit, basically those people who say, I'm not coming to visit at all, it's just not for me, I'm not interested in the destination. There's no must-sees that compel me to visit. And I think that's important. I think that that's something that is a real opportunity for the area in terms of future tourism product development. What can we do to provide new reasons for leisure visitors to travel? And then finally, just never comes to mind, just a lack of awareness in terms of why I've not ever visited a destination or haven't visited recently. So the last part of our presentation here is the destination marketing organizational structure assessment. And here I went in and looked at how all destination marketing is conducted in Goldsboro and Wayne County compared to other destinations. And you have an unusual structure for destination marketing and management in Goldsboro and Wayne County. It's unusual for North Carolina. It's not ideal for competitiveness. It's different from what you see in most other places in the state. So in most of the places in the state, there's a single independent destination marketing function that has a TDA board, like you have for the county, that provides Tourism Development Authority board, that provides that fiduciary oversight of the investment of occupancy taxes. There are very few, actually, North Carolina destination marketing efforts that are conducted within a municipal government structure like you have for Goldsboro. The most prevalent form of destination marketing organization in North Carolina is what we call a staff tourism development authority, where the executive director reports to the TDA board and where there's a single board serving as fiduciary oversight and the strategic advisor to that executive director or CEO. There are a few drawbacks to the current organizational structure in terms of competitiveness. Right now, there appears to be little conflict between city and county interests, but as tourism-related revenue grows, there may be disagreement in the future on spending priorities, on messaging, and on other components related to having a unified approach. And there are some big differences between the legislation for the county and the city and the way that oversight is conducted for the county and the city. Another unusual thing here for a destination marketing organization in the county is that relatively modest expenditures for those invoices, say above $4,000 for tourism marketing, require city council approval. That's unusual in that you rarely ever see that in other North Carolina destinations. Some destinations require TDA board approval, but you rarely ever see a county commission or a city council approval having to approve invoices above $4,000. Also noteworthy here is that for that reason, the budget can be altered by city council rather than the board, which is again unusual compared to other destinations. Another key thing here too is that it's more difficult within a municipal department structure to add tourism staff, even if tourism needs and revenue are growing at a faster pace than other municipal areas. And again, the county in particular is dependent upon the city's approval to do such a thing. It's also more difficult to compensate tourism staff in terms of salaries and benefits at a level that may be competitive with other similar sized destinations, because you're comparing that staff to other people within city or county government. Another thing that's unusual is that policies that may be typical for municipal government, such as the purchase of alcoholic beverages while entertaining, can inhibit what we consider to be widely accepted tourism sales and marketing efforts. And I just use that. Oftentimes, tourism sales and marketing may entertain visiting journalists, take them to a brew pub, take them to a winery or distillery, do the same thing for meeting planners, and that's more difficult to do if there's municipal government policy that prohibits those practices. And then lastly, while politics is a factor in all destination marketing, in such a structure, it can have very much outsized influence upon decisions that are made for hopefully the best in the best interest of tourism in the area. Now, I will point out that having two different entities with a joint destination marketing effort can work. What's unusual here is that you've got some very big differences, structural differences between the two groups charged with oversight and counsel. I give a couple of examples here. Boone and Watauga County, up in the high country, are marketed as a single destination, although Blowing Rock has its own tourism development authority, and they have a single staff. They actually have two separate tourism development authority boards that operate with a memorandum of understanding to support joint marketing of the destination. Salisbury and Rowan County operated the same way for several years until a couple of years ago. They formed a single TDA board with the same taxation rate across the county and a joint staff and marketing effort. There are also some limits in terms of how occupancy taxes can be invested in Goldsboro that are different than most of your peer destinations. In most places across North Carolina, they're governed by legislation that dictates at least 2/3 of occupancy taxes have to be invested in tourism promotion, which usually includes staff, and up to 1/3 of that money can be invested in tourism-related expenditures. And that can include things like festival and event grants. It can also include capital improvements like placemaking, tourism product development, new bricks and mortar development, sports facilities, and so forth. So in most places in North Carolina, you see that 2/3, 1/3 split. That's particularly true for any legislation since 1997. Now, I asked Ashlyn early on to provide a breakdown of how the flow of occupancy taxes is distributed, and she provided a chart for me, a flow chart that basically shows how tourism tax revenue is distributed between the city and the county. And you can see this is, again, pretty different in terms of how money is distributed between different entities. Of course, Wayne County has a 1% tax, most of which all of which has to be used for promotion of tourism. And the city of Goldsboro has a 5% occupancy tax, a good part of which goes to the Maxwell Center and the sports complex. Just for a little bit of a comparison, too, as we wrap up here, you see here that the comparison of total occupancy tax revenue by some peer counties, similarly sized counties and nearby counties. And most of these do not have unusual legislative restrictions upon how the occupancy tax can be invested. There are a couple of unusual examples in New Bern with their convention center. 3% of their tax has to go to their convention center in Craven County. They actually have a 6% countywide tax, so half of that goes to the convention center. In Pitt County, which is Greenville, they also have a convention center. They have a very similar situation, a 6% tax countywide that goes to, and half of that goes to their convention center. So just a few options here as I wrap up. There are really, in terms of organizational structure options, really 4 different options. One would be to maintain the status quo, which again is very different from the flexibility seen in a lot of other nearby destinations. Second option would be to create a unified TDA with a single rate of taxation across the county with tourism staff that reports directly to the TDA board. Another option is to create 2 TDA boards like what you have in Boone and Watauga County, one for the county, one for Goldsboro, but have a memorandum of understanding to support joint marketing and a joint staff. And then lastly would be to create an independent 501c6 that acts as its own destination marketing entity, similar to a chamber of commerce, if you will. And this would be another way of conducting destination marketing. So last slide here, where do we go from here? We still want to do, as part of this process, a stakeholder survey launch to find out what are the tourism-related businesses and other organizations, what is their opinion about tourism in the area? We've held off on this for the last few months just due to the fact that so many businesses and other entities have been struggling with trying to manage the coronavirus pandemic. We also want to engage tourism stakeholders and a couple of destination development workshops. What are the things that could be developed that would also bring visitors to the area? We want to review tourism investments and policies in terms of how the money is currently being invested, particularly in marketing and promotion. Create some tourism development strategies for the long term and develop a grassroots action plan to do those. So that is my presentation. I'll stop now and answer any questions that you may have as soon as I figure out how to stop sharing my slides here.
Actually, I got two questions. One is, we're saying that our occupancy is only 61% on Saturdays, but our hotels are always full on the weekends. And especially if the bases have something or something. To me, that doesn't, I mean, I'm always hearing we have 90% occupancy. We're,
A yearly average.
It's-
So it takes every weekend in the year, and that's the average. And I want to say maybe that slide also was a compile of maybe all 5 years of his research. That was the average occupancy rate for the county.
well,
Yes, that's correct. And of course, that's for all weekends across all hotels in the county. And so there will be some weekends when they may be much less than that. Certainly some weekends when it's much higher. Some weekends when it's much higher. There'll be sometimes during the year when there's very little activity going on. In terms of either leisure travel to the area or in terms of base activity. This is all data that's provided by the hotels themselves. They self-report to Smith Travel Research, and in return, those hotels get data back about the destination, get the same information back about the destination. So it's across, and of course that's for that's the average for the entire year, and of course for 2019, as was noted, was a little over 61%.
And then the other thing is that I don't agree with, is you said that the city council has to approve anything you spend over $4,000. And we give you, we pass your budget, and then you spend it how the board wants to spend it. I mean, all we do is pass your budget. Do you agree with that? Not agree with that? Can we go back and play with it? Yeah, I mean, certainly, but overall, I don't think we're involved in your budget.
Usually a cap limit that I work with finance on, that if it's over a certain amount or worded in a way, it could be considered a contract, and then that has to go before council. So that's where the auditing process, in a way, it's written for city policy, that's how it has to go about it.
Okay.
Anyone else have questions for this?
Yeah, Tim Salmon, the city manager. On those occupancy rates, roughly 60, 61% average over the year, does that mean we should make more hotels or less hotels?
Well, that depends. There's two answers to that. One, if you're a hotelier, the answer is no. But right now, that's at a rate that is, and again, we don't know where we are going forward given the impact of the pandemic. In the short term, I'd say no, because business travel in particular is going to be a challenge for the next year or two. That's going to be a significant challenge, and I'm sure the hoteliers in your community would tell you that they're already seeing an impact from COVID beyond just the leisure travel impact. The other answer, though, is that one of the things that did come back is that there's an opportunity even for for broadening the type of hotels that you have in the community. So there may be opportunities for things like a boutique hotel in downtown Goldsboro, which would provide something that's a unique opportunity that you don't currently have. Something that is more of a full-service type property, like a Hilton Garden Inn, for instance, that would provide more of a full-service hotel that provides that was appealing to both businesses and to business travelers and leisure travelers. So I think there's opportunities for both, I'd say, niche opportunities in hotels, but I think it's also going to be a while before you see a lot of investment, particularly in business-oriented destinations, until those numbers come back up after we bounce back, hopefully soon, from the impacts of the pandemic.
If I could follow up with that, with the occupancy tax, what do these DMOs do with it? You know, you're saying 2/3 for advertising, but surely some of that needs to go into the investments, such as the Bryan Multi-Sports Complex or a Maxwell Center or something else in the future. You know, you briefly touched upon that. Can you give us a little bit more on how
Sure.
occupancy tax can pay for the destination venue, if you will?
Absolutely. You know, one of the great things about most pieces of occupancy tax legislation, not all, but in North Carolina, is that it's written in a way that's fairly flexible in terms of being able to support a wide variety of investments. So you could decide, for instance, that you want to, with a typical 2/3, 1/3 split, you could decide, for instance, that you want to have some of that 1/3 go to the Maxwell Center operation, for instance, or a Maxwell Center expansion if you decided to go in that direction. But you could also decide, hey, we have another opportunity where we want to spend some of that money on public art or streetscaping or some other opportunity that is potentially not allowed by current legislation to create greater flexibility. And destinations do that in a number of different ways. They do it by working collaboratively with city and county government. They do it by working through grant programs where they do grants to city and county government, other private entity sectors, arts councils, and so forth. That's money that can be spent on any number of different tourism-related expenditures. And it's that term tourism-related expenditures that you find in most occupancy tax legislation in North Carolina that creates that degree of flexibility, if you will.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Chris? All right, Chris, thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate you going through that information for us.
Thank you. I look forward to be back in Goldsboro very soon. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on. Do we have quorum on either board? For the TDA, okay.
You can pass the minutes.
All right, so we will vote for the approval of June GTC WC TDA minutes.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposition? Passed. All right, we'll go through the financials. Starts on page 4. All right, so this goes to the end of last fiscal. So this is the last expense budget for fiscal to show where we ended up. So everything.
We saved essentially over $26,000 that was left unspent in the last fiscal year. But due to the fact that we collected, and you'll see that on the next piece of paper, we collected, I think we were down about almost 15% of collections just due to the COVID and the impacts of that on the travel market. So we really stalled all spending as much as we could in the last quarter.
Any questions on the budget? All right, next page. So this is the combined city and county 6% total collections for last fiscal. So it looks like we collected just over $1 million which considering the last quarter was greatly impacted by COVID, I think still shows that we had a fairly strong market up until that point. And it actually looks like May was the low point, and it seemed to start bouncing back in June and hopefully continues for the remainder of the year for our hotels. Looks like we were down about 16.4% year over year from last year, with a large significant portion of that coming in the last quarter. Next page is the Wayne County TDA collection report for the county.
Allison's on the line to take over for that.
Yep, Allison?
Yeah, so is the customer collection report first?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this gives you activity for collections through June, which represents occupancy tax through May. We actually still have one more month left to collect, which you'll see in the July when we do our July report. Everyone is paid up except for Econo Lodge, and we're just keeping an eye on that one too. And she may have received it in the last couple of days. I haven't checked back with her. Overall collections are down for the month from June of last year. I guess the one encouraging thing about this is the decrease in the month over year was less of a decrease this month than it was last month. So last month we saw, I think it was a 40 to 50% decrease. This month was a 37.6% decrease from June of last year. I don't know if that's going to be representative of what we see for the rest of the year, but it was a small little positive. That's pretty much all I've got for the collections report. If you go to your next page, which is your profit and loss versus budget.
Allison, Joe Daughter here. Could I ask you back on that report why there seemed to be a large increase on Holiday Inn Express for June?
Let me look at that. I think I looked at that too, Mr. Daugherty. I think they, if you look at April, they missed a payment. So I think they're actually paying for 2 months there.
Okay, all right, thanks. I didn't see that.
On your profit and loss budget versus actual, our year-to-date collections are down overall 12.9% from last year, which is about $25,000 less than what we collected at this time last year. However, I will say, as far as compared to what we budgeted, we're actually right on track. Because this month decrease was not quite as sharp as last month, our budget is actually right on track with our actuals for now. So we may come pretty close to hitting our budget by the time we add in our June occupancy tax. So that was a little encouraging just because that minimizes what we would have to supplement with fund balance if we did not meet budgeted projections. Everything else is pretty much paid out for the year, and we've made sure that all of our line items are, within budget. We will begin our audit process for the 1920 fiscal year over in probably the next month or so. And that'll probably take a couple of months to complete. I suspect we'll probably have a presentation in the October-November timeframe. That's pretty much all I had, unless anyone had any questions.
Nope, thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So next page is going to be the city collection report there. So again, down from year over year, about 15%. Any questions on that? Page 10 is your bar graph that shows the collections for the last 3 years compared to where we are now. So basically just a bar representation of the data before. Page 11 is your star report. So one thing that I'll note on here, which is a glimmer of hope, is May's occupancy down was 43%. June is only down 9.3%. So it looks like we're starting to see some bounce back in the hotel market. And hopefully that will continue to grow. Looks like ADR is down about 12%, obviously as hotels try to adjust to generate traffic. Page 12 gives you a breakdown of the hotels that are on that star report, and then page 13 is the modified star report that looks at the 4 hotels that would align with the targeted hotel for the Maxwell Center. Again, occupancy, while still down, is increased over April and May. And then, of course, ADR, which is not down as much, still looking at $96 a night. Any questions there? All right. Is Amber on the line?
Amber's not on the line, but I can share the inquiries for the month of June was 101. They were all digital inquiries that we send out these ads, or we have a little bit of advertising on some of the co-op partnerships that we have with the eastern part of the state, and people send us e-inquiries. They want to know more about us. We send them our visitors guides and website, put them on our mailing list.
All right, History Channel.
Okay, so the History Channel filmed June 24th and 25th. It was really fun, very exciting, and thanks to the PIO office for the county, they did a little bit of behind-the-scenes filming, which reminds me I need to follow up with them because we originally thought we had a tentative air date on August 16th, but we were pushed up now to August 9th. So with that said, there also seems to be a time change for their regularly scheduled programming. It used to be 8 p.m. and is now 8 a.m. on a Sunday. I've communicated with the producers to see when that change was made, because obviously now that's not the Sunday night prime time that they originally shared with us. That's been with this seasons 1 and 2. The show will still be aired on History Channel, FYI, and Amazon Prime. So the show will live on. It's just that the original air date will be in the morning, and that's not exactly ideal for viewership for its first air date. So I will be in communication with them to see what happened there, but sometimes that's not really in their control either, and I'll share whatever I find out. So we were likely going to put on maybe an outdoor open air viewing party, but I think 8 a.m. on a Sunday isn't that great of a community time for our population here. So we'll be in touch with more details.
Have you paid them everything you owe them?
Mm-hmm.
Was that contractually for a specific time? I mean, is there any way?
No, it wasn't written into the contract. Again, sometimes that's really outside of the producer's control. That's a network call. But I'm waiting to hear back some more details.
Certainly an expectation, right, that we would have some better prime time
Yeah,
viewership than
that was a
this
good
for the money we
surprise.
paid, so.
Yeah, it was definitely a surprise. So I'm kind of waiting to hear back on maybe the reasoning before I get a little more flustered with them. So, but
I agree with Tim. I mean, you know, we invested, I mean, that was a battle to actually get
Yeah.
those dollars in order to pay that production cost.
Right.
And now to convert it over to where it's airing at 8 a.m., I mean, people are not even up at 8 a.m. on Sunday hardly. So the viewership drops 99%.
yeah, it's not prime time as it
Before
was.
you give up, you need to let Ron or Andrew write them a letter.
Yeah, I haven't given up. I'm just waiting for them to share what happened, and then we'll go.
I'm sure it's the History Channel saying you didn't have the viewership and we're gonna air at a different time, but you would think contractually we would pay less for something like that, but.
Yeah, we're asking for a refund then.
I hear it. Yeah, I'm not far from that thought process either. Just before I figure out where to go from here, I want to know what happened and then figure out what to do.
Could there still be a viewing party for the community like downtown?
Yeah, I think so. I think I've been in talks with Brad and Scott at our city IT department, I haven't heard back on logistically how that would be pulled off with, a live stream. And I don't know if 8 a.m. or maybe we could record it, DVR, and then show it at a more practical time for everyone. That's an option too. I'm not completely just like, it doesn't work out, but we're trying to figure out how do you do like a drive-in movie theater type setup where maybe the audio is dialed in through a radio station and the visuals are projected onto the side of a building or a sheet. But that's where there's a lot of moving pieces. We're still trying to figure out logistically how do we even broadcast it and make it available for people. We're still figuring that out. It's not quite easy. And now we got bumped up a week, it's still, that really, puts us under the gun to figure out a way.
We'd be able to get a preview before it is aired.
They said they were sending us a sizzle for how the they do like a little preview the week before, at the end of that last episode. So yes, the sizzle should be coming. They were getting the last few data points and history points for the fire trucks from the fire department. So I don't think the show is quite done being edited, but that was one of the stipulations is I'd like to see something before it goes on air. Yeah.
No, we need to be sure about that now. If ain't that time we show up, if we don't see it first.
Right. So that's where, again, I'm waiting to hear back. I just found out.
You treat them like you treat us when we want to take your local dollars.
To be sure, Amir. I think you can count on me on that. So. All right. Okay, so transitioning to the new business, the Marketing Co-op Partner Program. I touched a little bit on this last meeting, but and kind of elaborate more. So, and if you want to just turn to page 15, I'll go into this slide here in a second. But so coming out of the June board meeting, there was a concern, their media plan, they wanted to see more local spending. And so I sent an email out to the voting members yesterday explaining how we'd be addressing that concern. So I've been wanting to do a partner program that provides discounted advertising to our local businesses that cater to both local population and non-local population. And this sort of idea popped up pre-COVID, and the idea would be to share with them buy-in for advertising opportunities that we're already investing in for our visitor markets. Now with the impacts of COVID, we've shifted gears a little bit, knowing that A, there was the concern not enough local advertising from the board, and then B, starting off smaller, right? So just starting off with maybe one advertising medium, such as radio. And we have a very small media market anyways in Goldsboro, Wayne County. And so the first media market that came to mind would be radio with Curtis Media, WGBR locally. So last week, we talked with folks with WGBR Curtis Media and proposed to them the idea that we have $9,000 of money that we want to use towards a partner program that, in response to COVID, allows a discounted way for local businesses to advertise to now just the local market, and maybe non-local. I mean, WGBR and Curtis Media, they own 60 stations across North Carolina, and they understand that tourism's aim isn't just local, right? They want to make sure that the benefits do exceed the Wayne County limits to hit ears of people who don't live here as well. So they're very interested in this idea of we come with them with a buy-in of $9,000, and that provides a way for maybe us to go in 50-50 with local partners who want to advertise, who maybe don't want to spend $100 on the radio ad but can spend $50, but they still get $100 worth of value. And so that's the idea. We met with them, we told them our desires to help the local market, and they've come up with a program that they've yet to share the details because I've yet to truly get the full support of the board, of wanting to do this partner program. And so just to kind of put this in perspective before, I guess, we say yay or nay, or how do we go about doing this, there was another opportunity that came up with a different radio station shortly after we discussed this partner program with WGBR. This is a station we've done business with in the past. It's Dick Broadcasting. It's so they include WRNS, Bob 93.3, and about 3 other radio stations that are prominent in Eastern North Carolina. WRNS, Dick Broadcasting, puts on the guitar pull event at the Maxwell Center, and that is because of past radio strategic partnerships with the radio company that we no longer do as much of with, for various reasons. But just for the sake of time, we'll just kind of skip into, in order for Guitar Pull to stay in our market, they do need more advertising support, and they specifically requested it from tourism. And so I am presenting this to you with, okay, so WRNS isn't exactly local, but that's not a bad thing, right? Because tourism isn't necessarily a local, we serve our community by bringing non-locals here. So that's one hand. I guess I'm just trying to be careful with how I propose this. So I'll go back to the local advertising. So if you look at the page 15 in the packet, there was a concern that we're not advertising enough locally. So if we look at the total marketing spend and how much is spent locally, we are spending close to 30%. And as I explained in the email yesterday, that is 3 times higher than the highest local spend from tourism offices that I could find. So this isn't normal, what we're already doing, but I don't mind doing a partnership with a radio station, not both. Only because to lock up close to 20 grand now of money within radio is not, I wouldn't recommend it. I think that's a lot of dollars in a one medium that is expensive and doesn't get you very far. So, so I'll explain this in that WGBR is a local company, so if that's truly the concern, I'd recommend sticking our money with the radio of WGBR. But if the concern is to ensure Guitar Pull stays in our market, then I would shift the focus to the other radio station. So,
How much do they want for the guitar pull? I'm still not clear on that.
all right, so on our other mini meeting we had the other day, if you want to turn to the next page, on page 16, we decided that $10,000 would be a fair offer from tourism alone. They are securing additional sponsorship dollars from, I would assume, the city general fund once again, the county general fund once again, the MAC chamber. So $10,000 actually matches their main sponsor for the whole show. And then, since this is post media planning and post, now we're in our fiscal year, we would have to shift the money around. So I proposed 3 options within our advertising dollars of how we'd go about carving out the $10,000 to propose to WRNS. And so I've also listed the pros and cons to the right. During the mini meeting we had last week about this opportunity, it became clear that this was very important to the Maxwell Center, as indirect bookings stem off of people attending this. It's a great marketing exposure for the venue because Dick Broadcasting does say the name of the venue time and time again on the airwaves. So that would be my first is, okay, if it's that meaningful to the Maxwell Center, we would take the media plan money that we had designated in the tourism dollars and shift it to the Maxwell Center. So, but the con of...
Let me clarify as well on the Maxwell Center is that part of our contract with them for the guitar pull, we give them a discount because we're getting additional advertising as well. So they may get a $3,000 or $4,000 discount on the venue, but we get $3,000 or $4,000 worth of advertisement as well.
Right, so it's a trade-off, that's very common. So I guess the con of using the $10,000 would mean that now all of your marketing dollars that tourism set aside for the Maxwell Center, they would be using now in radio alone for the entire fiscal
Well, have you
year.
talked to James about that?
He was in the meeting last week.
But since then, have y'all had any conversation?
I mean, no, this is
We,
the tourism
we got
budget.
this yesterday, so we really haven't had a chance to have a conversation as
Well,
well.
you got $10,000 for the Bryan Center. I mean, why can't you use some of that?
For the who?
The sports complex? Because you don't have it allocated in here if I'm reading this right.
Because my reasoning for this is, it's more meaningful to the Maxwell Center than it is for the Bryan Sports Complex, because it has nothing to do with sports marketing.
It's just an option, just a way to looking at it, is what she's presenting, 3 different ways,
Yeah,
and the
these-
board can give its
I could slice and dice
suggestions.
this
But
50 ways.
the
This
10
is the best way I could boil
Well,
it
can you
down.
do this? Can you get us the $9,000 for WRNS, the $10,000 that you need for the guitar pole, and work it out?
I don't know what that means.
Let me, so the 10,000, what did we do last year for the guitar pole, total? Because I know the city put in 5,000, I think, right?
I think 1,600 was deducted from tourism.
1,600?
But I mean, does anybody know what we gave for the event, total for advertising between?
Okay, so to
I guess
clarify,
the
this money doesn't
from
go towards the
RNS
guitar
is
pole.
that they were going from, what was their amount that they got last year, and the amount that they were getting this year was 0, right?
Okay.
Or-
So the way it is we, when I came into this position, we started radio advertising at $18,000. That was our annual
With
contract.
them?
With Dick Broadcasting.
Okay.
Then, again, we increased that dollar amount to say, maybe if we invest more into radio, we'll get the results that we were hoping to achieve, because we didn't feel like we achieved the value of the investment. So we poured more money into Dick Broadcasting, and the likes of, I think it was $24,000.
Can we also move money, there's other money that's available within tourism budgets such as travel, because, you know, we've got, what, $9,000 or $10,000 on travel, that if I'm a betting man, we're probably not gonna spend this year because of COVID and everything else. And I guess the other thing that I have a concern about is that we're approving marketing, not knowing even if the events will happen. You know, so where do we just table?
No, my recommendation would be this, right? We have to make a decision based off the information we have in the moment of today. And we have to live our life. We have to move forward, trying to achieve results in the midst of a lot of unknowns. This isn't the first time in our world we've had so many unknowns, but we still have to press forward and try. And today, the travel I have booked is 6 months out, or in the fall, close to the winter. And that's that's out of state. It's not been affected yet. So I can't pool dollars just saying, that probably won't happen, or probably this, probably that. This is what we can do now, and what we know now, what will work to propose. And 10,000 is reasonable, because we've spent close to 50,000 in the past, and I've explained before that the value of return was not there. Now, last year, we were going to spend more money with WRNS, with other events, but they were canceled due to the impacts of COVID, because in the spring was our heavy event season.
What did we spend last year, Essen? You still haven't answered that. What did we
With
spend?
WRNS?
Yeah.
Probably 1,000, only because Quidditch was the only thing that we ended up spending
So
money on.
they didn't do anything for the guitar pool?
Oh, so 2,600.
2,600. Did we give them money? You don't know?
Yes,
Yeah.
the city did.
The city gave them money, 5,000?
5,000, I believe.
Well, I was just trying to figure out what the total for guitar pole
Well, yeah,
is.
that's what I'm trying to
advertising.
do, but I ain't,
So if the
I ain't.
city gave 5,
I gave
travel gave 2,600, you gave 4,000 in trade.
I'm guessing.
Yeah, but we're not even gonna count you, because you're gonna go either way. I mean, so you don't.
My concern, I just want the guitar pole.
No,
You know,
I-
I want us to
Right,
make
so
sure
I guess-
that we can.
But that might not
Yeah,
even go,
My
right?
question is, it doesn't
But
matter
I think
where.
two things. The first thing is, you need to commit the money to them, but if they don't have it, they don't need to get the money.
That can be written into the
I mean, y'all need to be
contract.
sure you write that in there, right?
And
then-
if
then-
if it can't be written in, what we've done with other contractors, then it'll become credit. We'll use it eventually, Yeah, we have a lot of rollover from last fiscal year. So to use the money and keeping it within advertising and not going, well, maybe it can come from here and that, like, it's already very strapped in every other line
So,
item.
and to be clear, just so I'm clear and so everyone else is clear, your plan here, this is not to spend $10,000 advertising Guitar Pool. This is to commit to spend $10,000 with WRNS
Various other things.
on Quidditch or air show or whatever
Right.
opportunities we have to advertise with
And
them.
they're gonna get us the guitar pole as
I mean,
well.
we haven't finalized if this is gonna be enough, but to me, this is enough. In the midst of a pandemic, when tourism's hurting already, this is a very fair offer. This is 5 times what we did last year, and this is half of what we've done in years past. This is a very reasonable offer, especially now that I've explained.
So we're gonna do 1 or 2?
Well, so the question is, these are the three
Well-
options that she's presented where we could make up this $10,000 from a budget that was already planned and approved.
Yeah, well, I think since you've already had conversations with WGBR, they think I don't think you wanna go back on that.
Right, but my one concern is then if we're spending almost 20 grand on radio,
But we just spent
I
how much
don't-
for the History Channel? I mean, so that argument is, I mean, I get it, and moving forward, hopefully there'll be some more discussion about the plan of how to market it. But I mean, I think it's 2 different conversations. You've got WRNS that, you know, they say their listener reach through the Nielsen Group is like 350,000. So that's really garnering the Eastern North Carolina market, right? And then we've got our local WGBR Curtis Media Group that's really going to saturate this area. And I just think where we are right now, it would behoove us to continue to market and really streamline marketing efforts, not just come visit Goldsboro, but be at the Freedom Fest or the air show. And that brings up another question, whether these events are going to happen. But I think that you've already answered that's something that if these events don't happen, then we can have credit built in. But I mean, I don't know, that's just my only take on the argument about you've got that much money in radio. That is a big, big investment with the hope that it has a big, big, big impact.
but I guess what I'm saying is we've done this in the past and it's proven to not work. And that's where I'm saying, if we do this again in the middle of a economic recession for the tourism industry, I urge caution. That's where I think you should pick one or the other. But if you're saying no, do both, that's up to you.
Craig,
I think
Well, it's
it's two different things. Like, if you look at like the local piece of it, I'm so in love with this concept that y'all come up with, the local businesses, the buy-in. It's brilliant. I am not questioning that. But we can't say radio didn't work when 1,900 people came to the Maxwell Center for the guitar pool. And if our goal is we want people in Outlook, we want Havelock and New Bern and Jacksonville to come in for this Freedom Fest that I think has the potential to really be a big event for our area, for the military. So that's all I'm gonna say. I mean, and it's kind of a, you know, you can't, we're gonna go back and forth and
I just
not
want to make
see.
sure, like, Freedom Fest is not on here. So there's,
Well, what I'm saying is, if we say 10 grand can be, you know, put aside for the WRNS marketing, then absolutely it is, because you might go, I want to do some ads on Quidditch, I want to do some ads in Freedom Fest, and you allocate it that way.
I just want to be very clear that whenever there's these 3 options, 10,000 if it comes from the Maxwell Center, that'll be Maxwell Center's money to advertise for their year, however they see fit. If we go with option 2, 2,500 is for air show, 1,700 is for Quidditch, $2,300 will be for Road Run, Freedom Fest, Pig in the Park, a lot of events, and that's not a whole lot of money, and then $4,500 will be to the Maxwell Center for them to see how fit. Then option 3, it would be to switch from WGBR Partner Program, and then another $1,000 could be for unplanned events, and if you want to use it for Freedom Fest, that's fine. Moving forward with the partner program, it won't always be local. I just want to make sure that's also well known, is that tourism locally is taking away from our greatest opportunity, as we just saw earlier today, to make the biggest economic impact, which is heads in bed. So it will shift eventually, and the chamber can take it over if they want to stay local, but we would be taking a partner program outside.
I'll be selfish and say that I don't think that all $10,000 of maximum marketing needs to go to this one event. You know,
well, no, it's not to the event. It's,
well,
To the- yeah.
we're saying the $10,000 that was in the budget to give to the Maxwell Center to market with however they see fit on whatever events they want to use it on, will now be committed to them marketing however they see fit with WRNS.
Which is a little bit lopsided.
But again, that's still.
Well, I'm just
well,
clarifying, I'm not
no,
justifying.
but what I'm saying is that the Maxwell Center all of our dollars should not be spent specifically for, and it's really for this event, let's just be honest, it's specifically for this event with RNS.
Right, you're making a commitment to them.
But we, how important the event is to us, do I want tourism to spend every dollar that you've got to allocate for the Maxwell Center on radio? No. But do I want a portion of all the tourism dollars to go to RNS so that we can get the guitar pull? Yes. But I do think it's unfair to allocate 100% of all of the Maxwell dollars to radio for really this one event is what we're talking about.
Why don't we take 5,000 from the Maxwell Center and put it to the event, 5,000 from the Bryan Center and put it to the event? You got your $10,000. We're done. If something has to change, it can
Can we please stick
change.
to the options here?
What?
Can we please stick to the options here? Because the Bryan Multi-Sports Complex for sports and travel, that is going to be coming back online. I mean,
Well, that's fine. We can find the money somewhere else, actually.
but what I'm saying is we have it already, so please stop taking it from elsewhere, because then I'll take money from elsewhere to put it back in the Bryan Multi-Sports Complex. That's what I'm just trying to say is, please follow the recommendations that I've outlined instead of cutting from places that I've put a lot of time and thought into.
Well, Quidditch is Bryan Multi-Sport Complex.
No, that's a
Related.
media plan.
Yeah, but it's
It's a different.
supporting the
plan.
Bryan
But
Multi-Sport
you're still
Complex.
taking the money from the Maxwell Center, correct?
Option 2 spread
Option
loads it.
2,
It's
air
taking
show
the
Quidditch.
$10,000 from the Maxwell Center and redispersing.
No.
No.
Option 2 is
Option
she's
two
pulling from
says she
different
takes,
piles.
she takes $2,500 from the marketing line item that was in the budget for Wings Over Wayne and commits to
I'm
market.
sorry, I didn't understand. Okay, yeah, good. I see.
You're on board now?
I'm on
So
board.
two-
All right.
I thought you were taking the whole $10,000.
No. It would take $4,500 from the Maxwell line item,
Yeah,
$2,300 from unplanned,
Great
17
idea.
from.
I wish I could have thought of that. Good work, Ashley.
Mr.
Go get your
Chairman,
coffee, there you go.
I've been quiet here. Could you explain to me in regards to this $9,000 partner program? From what I'm understanding, you're going to offer, you're going to allocate $9,000 and you're going to partner with local businesses to where basically, we're going to put $9,000 into the pot and they're going to put $9,000 into the pot. In other words, we're going to match their dollars?
So it'll be one or two ways, and based off of the discussion for today, we're gonna go back to WGBR and finalize how best the value would be relayed to businesses. So either $9,000 is our buy-in, and then say we spend over the course of 9 months, $1,000 a month out of tourism dollars. And say, one of the local downtown restaurants or boutiques says, well, I want to partner in with you. So maybe they come in at a $500 spend. They just reimburse us. So it would be $9,000 flat for WGBR. Or WGBR's plan, which I've yet to fully get all the details, it could be now $1,500 spend. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's either they add money to the buy or they just reimburse us for the buy so that they get discounted advertising.
And who are you going to be offering this partnership with?
It'll be, like I said, it won't be to like insurance agencies, banks. It really is going to be catered towards mom and pop events, restaurants, businesses that cater to both visitors and non-locals. So people who, we've already identified in some of this research that may know us for our shopping, our dining, our hoteliers if they want to advertise. And so those are the things those would be the businesses that we would target the most.
If we accept option number 2, are we still going to be having the partner program?
Yes,
Yes.
because 3 would get away with the partnership program and put the money into the other radio
But I just want to
stations.
explain too, we're doing this program and we're doing it locally for our local advertiser for this exceptional time, because it's hard right now for businesses to afford what they may have used to afford. It may just be hard to even consider marketing because it's not a tangible thing that really they can count on to bring in customers. But in the future, we plan to grow this, not to say, no, we don't need you, WGBR, but maybe it becomes something that we transfer to the chamber, that they facilitate, and then our curated menu for what people can buy as advertising reaches more of a 100-mile radius that's not specifically local. Because, you know, as I explained in that email yesterday, like, and I know there's a lot of people at the table who are very keen on local spending for advertising, I just want to remind you that tourists aren't here already. You know, we need to go and reach them if they're not here. And most tourism offices across the state have a no local advertising policy for that purpose, to protect the dollars from politics, from to achieve their greatest economic impact, which is to get visitors here and stay ultimately in the hotels. So this is a starting point for a partner program. I hope we can continue by growing it. That aligns a lot more with tourism's mission. I think that'll happen over time as the master plan continues to develop, strategies are developed, and that also guide the way the money is used. I just want to be clear on that from the get-go, that we're starting here, but there is a tendency that this could expand that might not always be very locally focused.
Well, I mean, you know, I think it's a great program, and I think you need to really expand it, and from the standpoint of, you could go into billboards as an example, and I just recall Wilbur complaining that he was losing tremendous amount of business when we opened the bypass.
Yeah.
And many people turned around and said, well, why aren't you putting a billboard out there? In fact, the county reached over and, to make sure that billboard access was available out there. And yet Wilbur didn't advertise, and he said, well, I just can't afford it. So if that's the case, why don't we try to partner with some of our restaurants and hotels and shopping and such to where they can afford it?
Exactly. I think right now, because the money, okay, there's two ways. The money isn't as strong as it would be in years past to make it a multi-layered marketing partner program. So yes, we're going to start very simple, very streamlined, one option. If you want to use it, great. If you don't, that's okay. But to be fair, this program, if it serves only the local visitors, it just might be something that might be better fit for the chamber to take on eventually down the road.
And we offer that through our Total Resource campaign. We give that an option for our members when we're speaking to them. And we've got that with billboards, with radio as an option. So just as an aside, that is something we very much would like to see expand.
And if you could, I apologize for stepping out, but I called James and I want to clarify. Part of the $10,000 which the Maxwell gets helps market for training for them as well for events. So if we just commit even half of that, then that's part of the, it's not just radio or billboards or something. It is a conferences also that tourism we're paying for the Maxwell Center as well. So the question I again have is, I believe that some of the Maxwell money should go towards the marketing piece for the guitar pool. But again, it's more than just the radio ads that we use to that marketing piece.
Right, but unfortunately to get, and that's the bind we're in, to
Yeah.
get guitar pool.
But then that's my argument.
My
about
question would be
training
this.
and other options.
My question would be this, and maybe James would be better suited to answer, is what sort of residual bookings do they feel they get, dollar amount, from having guitar pool?
In talking to James, they had 2 or 3 weddings that of people who went to the guitar pool said, wow, this is a great venue, we've not been here before. One of the things that we've been able to use, as mentioned in the other meeting, is, we can show Scotty McCreery and Hunter Hayes and those type, we can hold and have pictures and that we're using for marketing. So it shows that we can hold those type of events here in Wayne County.
Is there a dollar amount on those weddings, roughly? 5,000, 10,000?
But there's a lot of residual that we get from that because people, just bringing 1,900 people into that building is really a huge part.
Right, and the only reason I ask is if we don't do this and you lose that, what's that net effect gonna be on the Maxwell Center as well? So trying to figure out,
Right.
if we spend $5,000 and you get $10,000 worth of business, then it probably makes more sense to do it. If you spend $5,000 and get
I
500,
would say at least it breaks even.
Okay.
I would say, if I'm guessing, it at least break even on the event.
So it sounds like number 2 would be the best option.
Before we go there, let me ask you a little bit more about this partnering program. Who's making the decision on who gets how much money? Is that something that should come in the form of the grants we've been doing before that comes to the board for decision, or are you gonna do that, and are you setting parameters on it?
So they don't get money, right? Like,
Well, we're gonna give money for advertising that matches them, right? So do we do
So if
$500
someone
per?
wants to go do an advertisement for his place,
Right.
what's his process? Who's gonna
So,
approve it, not approve it?
if I'm spending $1,000 a month, we have up to $1,000 that people can come and match with. So if I have 3 other advertisers or 4 other advertisers that want to go in for $250 a piece, then they're just spending $250. They're just matching.
Is it
whatever
first
we're
come,
buying.
first serve, and the money's out for that month, or is
Yeah,
there a
it would
process,
be-
you know what I
It'd
mean?
probably be first come, first serve, and maybe depending on what their needs are, if they only have like maybe a 3-month campaign they want to do to test the waters, and then come back. I mean, that's how it would work. I mean, the program details, once we finalize if it will be a match or maybe a co-buy-in, then we'll go ahead and get some of these advertising agreements worked out so that they know what they're responsible for paying.
Is everybody good with that process through sounds like it's through the director's decision rather than a board decision on a grant or something?
Well, they're not getting money, right? This is just a
The
Well,
opportunity,
you-
they're getting the opportunity.
Right,
Yeah,
so there's
so-
no like, if
They're
it
getting a
comes
discount.
down,
They're
Yeah.
getting a discount from ours.
yeah, like if it comes down to, shoot, we have more people who want to advertise we have money for, I don't think WGBR is going to turn them away. They're like, don't worry, there's already buy-in, just go in, like, we'll get you in. Like, I don't think they're
Maybe
going
we
to
ask
be like,
W-
we're full.
we asked WGBR that. What happens if we've
Yeah.
committed to 9 and outside interest is 15
Oh, they're
additional
gonna
on top
be
of it?
fine with
What
that.
does that rate look like?
Yeah,
It's going to be the same rate. Yeah.
I don't get it. It's gonna be the same rate. I mean, we're matching someone else's contribution, right?
Well, we're committing to WGBR that we're gonna bring in an additional $9,000 on top of ours. That's kind of what the partner buy-in. If we bring in an
Okay.
additional 15 on top of it from
Okay,
outside,
so
I
it
don't
doesn't,
think
so
they're
it doesn't
gonna.
matter.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna dollar for dollar match for us.
Yeah.
There's actually no decisions other than we're
There's
gonna
no-
give you
it's not-
1,000 a month or
I
something.
guess the reason why there's no danger to me facilitating this program within internal staff is because it's not a competitive thing. They're
I
not
see.
competing, they're just, you want to do it, great. It's like sales, like you don't, fine, like, and if it's not interest, if there's no interest from businesses, then obviously it's something that we don't do moving forward, but we'll still spend 9,000.
If we commit to spend 9,000 and get no takers, I'm assuming WGBR will just let us use it as $9,000 in radio campaign?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have,
Okay.
if it doesn't work, we've got events we can use it towards or do it. So I think that's a good plan. So is the consensus option 2? Is that kind of where everyone's leaning?
I'm good.
That's my. Okay. So whomever is negotiating or speaking with Rob, I think, I don't know who that is, it's not me. You want to let him know that this is our buy-in to help get Guitar Pool here, then that's,
Craig, how do, James and Rob get along, do you know? You know how James and Rob, you know how if they get along or don't get along?
I think they're fine. I think they've had a really good, again, the concern that they got about signing the contract with Guitar Pool is because we pulled back marketing funds. And they said they wanted support from the community before they were willing to sign a contract for Guitar Pool.
You want to let Craig and James, or James and Dustin or somebody meet with him?
We can let them know.
Okay.
We can let them know.
but from what I've also heard, it sounds like there was some balk at 10,000 as it not being enough. But I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here that this is our cap. Right? We're not going to come back and be like, shoot, we need another 5, or shoot, we need another 10. Like, to me, this is a very
Well, the county
reasonable.
can do that if they want to.
I'm just saying, like, I think this is a reasonable pool
Well,
from tourism
But
dollars.
I would also go back to the point, if they're unwilling to do the guitar pool again, because again, they make money off the guitar pool. They make money off sponsorships, they make money, off of the groups, that they make money, and we give them a discount at the Maxwell Center. That if they don't sign the contract, or they're not committed to it, then we don't do the advertising.
I agree.
You know, it's kind of, here it is.
So this,
We're willing to do X amount of dollars on your advertising. Here's your contract we need you to sign for the guitar pool. If you don't sign the guitar pool, good luck.
So you're gonna work that through the county level with your attorney and such? Or is that coming back to the board or Ashland?
It's whatever, you know, if y'all give us the authority, we can go ahead and just take care of that and just say that TDA is willing to promote, you know.
we're willing to budget $10,000
And
towards
in these
WRNS.
allocated ways, right? Like air show,
Right,
Quidditch,
in these allocated ways,
events,
we're
Maxwell Center.
willing to do that. James just texted me, there's been no bulking from him on that amount.
No. It's not Maxwell Center.
No, that RNS has not been, that 10,000 should be a good amount. It should
Yeah,
be-
I think that should be a good amount, but if people want to invest more, anybody in sales isn't going to turn that down.
I guess
Right.
I
Yeah.
heard last night that it was said that was just a start.
I think it's moving in the right direction from 0 to 10 grand.
You know, this-
Yeah, I think that's
and- and-
moving in the right
It's-
direction, 0
it's
to
not
10
saying
grand.
that he will not push for more, but.
He's a salesman.
Yeah.
He's not saying he will push for more, but if he wants
He
the
ain't stupid.
10,000, he's got to sign the contract for the guitar.
Yeah, so the agreement is, we will spend $10,000 under two stipulations. One, guitar pool contract gets signed, and two, understanding that if these events get canceled because of COVID,
Right.
then obviously we will not be spending the money on those events to advertise. We're not advertising for something that's not gonna happen. So that has to be the two understandings.
I think that's very
Is
fair.
everyone in agreement with that?
We are in agreement.
Okay.
That's very fair.
And then we're gonna pull those funds and allocate it based upon option number two,
Option two.
correct? All right.
Correct.
Y'all giving me a headache.
Come on, Chuck, you love these meetings.
What else we got? Is that good?
I think that's it.
I think we made history here with the longest meeting that
It might
Been
be.
here last time.
Last time was, yeah, it was a long one too.
I wasn't here last time.
All right, August 26th, next meeting, location to be determined as we see what restrictions we're under from executive regulations. All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good week.